Welcome back to the shop. We have this 98 Softail back on the lift. If you remember a previous video, we did a top end rebuild on this, big bore kit, upgraded cam, new lifters, bunch of work. So if you remember this bike, good memory, and email me and I'll send you a clean bill of health. So he's put the 500-mile break-in on, but he's decided, hey, let's upgrade the clutch. So if you've ever wondered what it takes to upgrade a clutch, or if you ever wanted to do it yourself, you're going to find this is super simple, easy to do. So come along with me as you and I put a new upgraded clutch on this bike and get it back to the customer. Welcome back to Butler Customs Motorcycle Shop. All right, so here's our clutch kit that we've got. And now there's different upgrades you can do. I went with the Belt Drives LTD, and I'll tell you why. American made, comes with really good instructions, but the primary reason that I got this over Barnett or anything like that is because, well, come on, Bucks, is because it come with this new plate here. So this new tension plate is really a good upgrade to do. So if you're going to upgrade your clutch, especially if you've done a big bore kit or something like that, a bigger cam, and you find that your stock clutch just isn't clutching anymore, don't forget this spring plate. Upgrade this. I believe this is like a 10% stronger plate. So when we pull the old plate off, we'll compare the height of these teeth as compared to the other one and see how much more, see, number one, how much the old one was worn out, and number two, how much this plate has. Now, we've got new metals and new pads. So what I like to do, keep them in the bag, but open your bag up and pour your oil in here. So these are supposed to pre-soak anywhere from, it says 10 to 15 minutes. So do this first. That way, while you're taking things apart, you don't have to worry about, oh crap, I forgot to pre-soak these, and then you got to take a break. So we'll go ahead and fill this up with oil, then we'll start on the primary side. Now the instructions for these are very good instructions. Let me get behind you here. So this is the 98. It does the big twin and the twin cam. It does come with the extra plate, and it came with that. Now, in my opinion, the Recluse is the top of the line clutch. They even have automatic clutches and things like that. But for the price, it was between the Barnett and the Belt Drive. The reason I said I went with the Belt Drive is because it came with this plate that is a little bit stronger than OEM. The other Barnett didn't come with it. Yes, you could get it for an extra cost, but this just turned out to be good. I've used Belt Drives before. They're really good. So it just tells you that this is a 10% stronger diaphragm clutch spring, which is this right here. So we will see what the height difference is on this compared to what he's got on there. And here's something that I have preached for years, and it's good to see it in an actual manual or paper here. The use of synthetic oils is not recommended, as they tend to cause slippage. I've said that over and over and over. When it comes to your clutch, use just straight oil, just OEM oil. Do not use synthetic oils. I know you want to because you think it might make your bike better and the oil's better, but when it comes to clutch, you want friction, you want grip, you want to grab when you pull that clutch in and out. So do not use synthetic oils in your clutch. Just use straight OEM oil, SAE oil in that. So this kind of tells us how to do it. You know, you'll start with a friction plate and then you'll end with a friction plate. So it's a friction plate, it's a metal plate, friction plate, metal plate, all the way out to the end here. Now, what you're also going to find is when we get in there, I like how they've added this. You're going to see a judder spring and a set spring that's for the stock. You're not going to use these. Do not reuse these. So we're going to pull everything out of the clutch basket and not use any of those parts again and go with this because it's got the extra plate in there and you do not need the judder spring and the spring seat anymore. So that's what that is. You also find when we get in there, there's one plate in the clutch pack that's OEM that's thicker, bigger. We won't use that either. So this will be just a total replacement. So we'll just pull everything out, put everything back in. So let's get started on soaking these. Then we'll go ahead and remove the primary side. We'll let the oil drain and all that good stuff. So I want to set this aside. You don't pre-soak this. Now, some say, well, do you pre-soak the steels or not? I just leave it all in the bag. And I put everything in there, fill it up to the top, set it up somewhere like that, and let them soak. All right, so we'll go ahead and get this oil coming out. You don't need a big jug under here. It should only be about a quart in there. 40T is what is on this primary. You might have a 5/8 head on it. But this one has the 40T. Now you'll have a magnet here. And it looks about normal. No big chunks, just little pad parts. That's kind of common. We'll clean this up before we put it back in. We'll also put some thread plumber's tape on that. And there's your 40T on that. Now while this is draining, I will pull off this inspection cover here for the primary chain, and that'll help the oil kind of flow out a little bit better. There we go. Now already look how much that oil's coming out. Once we broke those free. Now you will have short bolts and long bolts. And what you're going to find is the top and the back right are long bolts. The bottom and the front left are short bolts. And if you get them mixed up or backwards, an easy way to tell is up in here, you'll feel the longness for this long bolt and over here too. And back here, they are short. That is short. So you'll know which way goes which. And I said it only had a quart in it. That should be slowing down hopefully pretty soon. Golly. Okay, somebody had really overfilled this. There we go, it's starting to slow down. It looks like more than a quart to me. I don't know, might need to measure it. But we'll go back in with just shy of a quart, but I usually go ahead and put a whole quart in. And let's see the primary chain. Now with that off, you can reach your finger up in here for that primary chain. And boy, it's as sloppy as a drunk man singing the national anthem. And I ain't kidding you. So we'll look at that once we get this off. Now we don't have to take off the adjustment for the clutch cover here. We can leave the primary cover on for now. And we don't have to take off any exhaust, and so that's good. But on these models, you do have to take the front pegs off. Okay, so on this model, to get this cover off, we're going to take this whole floorboard, kickstand, shifter assembly off. I'm going to leave these where they're set. I'm not going to mess with these, so there's no need in marking where the teeth are at on this and on the shifter and then getting it all set back where it is. What you can do is just disconnect your shifter linkage here and then undo your 4 bolts for this. And this one has a bolt for the crash bar as well. Then this whole assembly comes off as one thing. So you don't have to worry about taking these off and taking your floorboard off. And then you got to take this bracket off to get to this off. You don't have to do any of that. Just undo your shifter linkage, 4 bolts holding this whole thing on, and then a bolt for your crash bar, which might be in, no, it's a separate bolt. So we'll do that now, get all this off, and then we can take our cover here off. So like many times, my plan failed me. This cover is just a dress cover. I took the screw out here, the screw back here that holds it in. I was able to raise this up. Now to get this entire bracket off, there's a bolt behind the kickstand that you can't get to until you take the kickstand off. Well, the floorboards are mounted in with the kickstand and the kickstand spring retainer as well. So once I got the floorboard off, I discovered, hey, there's enough room here now that I can move this and I can actually get this primary off. So I don't have to go any further than this. So you had this spring here that holds on your kickstand spring, a bracket that goes up in there. Then you have the floorboard here that went into the crash bar, and then this side mounts up under here, and the other side screws into that spring bracket. They're all 1/2 inches except for this 9/16 that was on the crash bar. So now it looks like we've got enough room now, I believe, I'm hoping, yeah, to slide this primary off. So now we can go ahead, I'm going to put the drain plug back in and then go ahead and remove all the bolts just so nothing really kind of keeps dripping out on me and all over the thingamajiggy lift. So if you do that, I was planning on taking all this off. I mean, I could now. I could just go ahead and pull this right here off. Take these 2-3 bolts out. Well, let me just do that. It was extra steps, but let me just go ahead, take these 3 bolts out, then I can just remove this whole thing like I had originally planned to do. Why not, right? While we're here. So like 9/16. Get this up out of the way. Oh, yeah. Well, it's kind of a good thing because these were not tight. Neither were the 1/2 inches either. Yeah, see, that's just not good. So we'll just go ahead and take this whole plate off. It's just extra. A couple of extra. 3 extra 9/16 bolts. There we go. Now we've got tons of room to work and to go ahead and get that primary off. All right, I got the drain plug back in. I got it wrapped and cleaned off. Now we're ready to take this primary off. There will be some that'll leak down here before you can get it all the way off. Just be prepared for that. Also, make sure you got room to set your primary case down somewhere nice and safe. And there is a procedure in taking this off, a sequence actually in torquing it down. But when taking it off, just crisscross where you're going. And what I like to do is just kind of break them free. I like to start down here at the bottom, 3/16. And that's a good sound you want to hear. You don't want them to be loose. By the look of this bottom frame, this thing's been leaking pretty bad. You can hear it kind of separating. You'll probably start seeing oil here in a little bit. And sometimes now these covers do get warped. And really, no matter what you do to them, they're gonna leak on you. All right, now that I've got everything broken free, I can come in with my gun and just zip them out. I leave this one right here, I leave on to the last. Now you want to keep these in order of how you take them out. Some are longer than the others. That last one felt a little cross-threaded, didn't it? Sounded a little cross-threaded. So far, they're all the same but there are going to be some that are going to be longer. That one right there is longer than the rest of them. That one's not. That one is. That one is. That one is. And that one should be too. All right, so what we've got is 5 longer bolts, which is, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the 5 on top starting here, count 5. That's your longer ones. And we can take this off, set it to the side, and stick some rags up in there to help kind of catch some of your overflow. And there's that chain slop, as you can see, and it smells like the clutch is really burn up in this. Stick some more up in there, maybe some up in here, or just down here. There we go. So I think you can see this. What you've got here is 6 bolts that hold tension on this spring plate here. Then you have this center bolt with an Allen and a locking bolt, and then a little plate here that's held in with a spring. This bolt runs your clutch. When you pull your clutch in, there's a rod that pulls in and then separates, pulls this clutch apart. That disengages the transmission from the motor. So the way this works is when these plates come out, that disengages from here. When the plates are squeezed together, they're friction plates against metal plates, and they grab. And therefore, when they grab, it turns with the motor, it turns the transmission. It doesn't need to be in any specific gear to do this job. So once you've got this far, this is about all that you do. Now, there is tension on this rod that runs through the transmission over to the clutch with the 3 little balls and whatever that's called, the thingamajigger. So you do have to let tension off of that. And the way you do that is you go up to the clutch cable. There's an adjustment in the middle of that cable, usually on the left of the bike. It's got a boot on it. Slide the boot off and then adjust that clutch so there's all the slack in it that you need. So what I'm going to do now is I want to get you up here close where you can see this clutch pack. I want to squeeze the clutch and let you watch how this operates with this spring and everything intact. Then you'll get a better sense when we go back with it, especially when we adjust it and set it to where it should be, how that operates. We'll also get this slack out. Now, I see guys all the time make a mistake when they're adjusting their primary chain. A primary chain is not like a sprocket chain or a drive chain on the back of your bike. You don't want it tight as you can get it, because that does damage to the bearings that are in here in your main and the bearings that are up here in your compensator. So you want a little bit of slack, but you don't want that much. There is a gauge you can put on here and push up to judge how much slack is proper. And with this style of adjustment, it's really easy to get it how you want it, how it should be. Raise this up, lock it in, and then you're done. So I like these old styles. I don't really like the automatic tensioners on the twin cams. I don't think they're good. They keep too much tension. Because if you get in on the power, that chain will go up. That tensioner, since it's automatic, will pop up, and it'll keep that chain too tight. And that's when you'll blow out bearings on your transmission or primary side. So I'm going to grab that clutch. I'm going to get you in here, and you can watch how this operates. This spring plate keeps tension. The push rod pushes it out. When I pull the clutch in, it separates these discs, and you can actually see that moving and operating. All right, so I've got you up here. Now watch as I compress this clutch. You see that separation. Now it appears like the whole thing is moving out against this spring thing here, but it is actually separating inside here. I can feel it with my finger when it closes and tightens, and when I pull out, I can feel it getting wider. It might not look like it's separating, but it actually, when the bike's running, it actually is. So that's why we want to let tension off of this clutch lever, so that then we can get this nut off, we can pull this out, and we can take this whole plate off. Now usually if I'm just pulling this clutch basket with the clutches in it and everything assembled, I'll just let tension off of the clutch lever, then I'll just leave this nut and this alone. I'll take the snap ring out and I'll just pull this out whole, put it back in whole when I'm done, because I've not changed any of the pads and there's no new adjustment that needs to be made. But with putting new clutches in, an adjustment needs to be made, because the clutches are going to be now thicker where they're newer, and we'll have to set this manually and not just throw it back in and assume that it's right. So to get it correct, we will be pulling out all of that off. So right now, let's take the tension off the clutch lever, the cable, and then we can come in here, pop this 11/16 off. This will just thread out or come out with 11/16. Snap ring comes off. Then we can start working on these to get this plate off and then our clutch pack off. All right, here's our adjustment on our clutch lever. We will just pull this up if we can. Been a minute since that's come off. Ugh. Yuck, yuck, yuck. All right, so pretty nasty, pretty rusty. Water's gotten down in there. This is your lock nut here. We'll break this loose. Then we should be able to twist this up into here. That'll let all the slack off the clutch. I like to run them all the way in. Then when I do, I'll pull the clutch in 2 to 3 times just to make sure that rod pushed back. All right, this lock nut's a 9/16. This adjusting nut or sleeve is a 1/2 inch, so I'll just break this loose. There we go. It should screw up in here. I can hear that our hound dog is back. Our little baby hound dog. Now usually you can turn this with your hand like I'm doing. You don't have to hold this up here. So this is working good. And I'm going to bring this all the way in together to let all the slack out of that clutch cable. Now I'm going to go up here. My clutches should be nice and loose. There we go. So don't make that mistake of having that popped out. That'll still keep tension, and when you go to push the clutch in, it'll actually still clutch. So make sure that's down all the way. Now I have nothing on my clutch. Now we're ready to take that lock nut off and start taking the rest of things apart. Now that the clutch push rod, there's no pressure on it, we can go ahead and break this lock nut. It's an 11/16. Yeah, you can put a socket on it. But I've got this wrench here that I bent, or actually a mechanic friend of mine gave me this that does cars. And this works really well when you're having to hold this and lock this down. This does great. It's a 7/32 on this Allen here. But since we're taking it all out, wow, there we go. We can usually just break that off, and then we can turn this whole thing out, which we will need. Now again, if you weren't replacing the clutches, don't do this. Like if you're having to take your stator out or changing anything on the primary chain or anything like that. So this has a beveled end in it, and that push rod, as you'll see in a minute, has It looks like a, well, it looks like a push rod. And it's kind of rounded like this and sets in there and pushes against this plate here. And now these are under pressure, and it's a 10 millimeter. I know it's a Harley, but it's 10 millimeter. And these you want to take out just a little at a time, and you want to cross pattern them like putting on lug nuts on a car. When we go back to put it back on, there is a proper torque spec and technique to press this plate together. So what I'm going to do is just break it off a little at a time. There we go. And you'll find that it keeps staying under tension because that spring plate keeps pushing it out. Now, once I get enough tension off of it, I'll pull them out with a gun. And we're not putting the spring back in, so it really doesn't matter about damaging the spring. So let me get these out. They're all the same length, so it doesn't matter where they go. Now you can see how much that plate come out. Okay. Put these there. And now you see it's got a plate. It has teeth here that catch this here. It sets in like that, and it kind of keeps it from spinning and moving. So there's our old plate, and we'll see how that compares to the new plate. So I'll set this aside. And now we can go ahead and start pulling this off. We can leave this in here. There was no need to take that off. And if you're lucky, if you're lucky, wow, everything comes off together. That's awesome. All right, I'm just using a little magnet here. You can also use a pick to get them off, and I might have to. There we go. You've got a concave metal spring here. Then you've got a flat one back there. There we go. So you've got a flat one here, one that's concave. These are the ones we will not be using, we won't be putting back in. Then you've got a series of friction plates, steel plate, friction plate, steel plate. Woo! That was burn up. Friction plate, steel plate, friction plate. Oh my goodness. Steel plate. Now look, guys, and gals, when they're blued like that, that means they have overheated. They burned. And they will warp. They will lose their function. Friction. There's another burnt one. Friction. Another burnt one. Friction. Another burnt steel. Friction. Another steel looks good. And friction. And then you got your plate, your cap plate. Okay. That goes back on. So the two things that we're not going to be adding to the kit, actually three things, but we're not going to be adding this steel ring that goes in back there, and then this judder and this spring ring that goes in there. So take these out, throw these away, put these with your old ones. Now, if you were just doing something inside your clutch basket, or if you're replacing your clutch basket because maybe you've got a broken tooth here, or the basket has a teeth, the starter gears tore up on it, or even get the gear, sprocket gear for your primary chain. If you were replacing the basket but not the clutches, I really don't know why you wouldn't replace clutches, but say you weren't. Then you would put all this together as it came out, run a zip tie through here, zip tie it up, and then you know the order it goes back in. Now, let's get this spring over to the table and let's judge how much spring tension is in here, how our new one compares to it. So this isn't an exact, per se, scientific measurement. I'm just curious to see kind of what these springs are. This is the OEM one, the stock one. Looks like it's just a little over a centimeter. This is the new one. Oh wow, and it's a whole lot more. That's a whole lot more. So this one is about 1¼ centimeter. I guess in centimeters you wouldn't say quarter, but you get what I'm saying. This is a lot more tension. Not only that, you can see the wear where that plate is grabbed on this. And as far as feel, it feels about the same, but it doesn't feel as heavy, but it feels thicker. I don't know if that makes any sense. But this is a good upgrade, and I'm glad that we went with the clutch kit that had the new spring and an upgraded spring. So our springs are done soaking. This is a messy job, so I'm going to get some gloves on as I put the new springs or new friction plates in and the new spring in, and then we'll get everything buttoned back up. All right, we're going to go back in with our new clutch plates. It's been soaking now, and it is a messy job, so I suggest that you wear some gloves. All right, so we're going to start with a friction plate, and as you can tell, these friction plates have a whole lot more friction in than these old ones. So you'll start with a friction plate and you'll end with a friction plate. So we'll go friction plate, steel plate, and we'll just keep doing that pattern. Now 9 plates are in the stock. This has an extra plate, so there'll be 10 plates in here. And remember, we kept those 2 springs out with a judder and other little concave plate. Now the oil that you soak these friction plates in, some people will reuse that oil to fill up the primary. I do not, because I usually find that there's trash after these soak of material that just kind of comes off, and I don't want to get that back in. This. So I will use fresh oil, and again, SAE oil, not any type of synthetic oil. All right, and that should set on there just flush like that. I do have this bowl under here to catch anything that drips off. Now we're ready to go back on with this plate here that sets in the holes, just like that. Then we have our spring here that will go on like this. Oh, hold on. Doesn't go like that. It goes like this. Set that on like that. Make sure your little tab thing is out. Then your plate will set right up in there. We'll spin this to where our holes are exposed. That'll stay there. We'll get our little cover, we'll set it in the grooves, and then we can turn this to line up with our holes. Now we've got our 6 bolts that go back in. They are torqued to anywhere from, I think, 90 to 110 inch-pounds. But I'm going to go with 100 to split the difference. And I'm going to put a little bit of blue on these, although it doesn't say to. So I'll get these started. That'll help kind of hold everything in. Now you'll want to tighten in a crisscross pattern, a little at a time, because what it's going to do is press this spring in. So I'll start just with a regular ratchet. I'll try to find my 10 millimeter. And we'll just start tightening. Gonna make sure your spring is seated real well all the way around the seat. Just gonna bottom this out here and go up here. Now you might have, you know, if you're working on an old Evo, you might have a clutch basket that doesn't have these bolts. Instead, it's got like a clip that clips down to hold this spring in. It won't have this. If you run into that style, I mean, you can do it other ways, but I just buy the tool. It's cheap on eBay or Amazon or wherever. And it's actually a hub that kind of sets on there and then screws into this. And as you tighten it, it'll compress this spring, and then you can put your little snap things in there that keeps the spring in place. But this one's got the nice bolts here that are much, much easier. It doesn't require any special tools. All right, so they're all tightened. Now I'll just keep tightening them down a little bit again. And as you do that, you'll find that the ones that you go back to are loose now. That's the idea. It's best to do this by hand and not by any kind of power tools. And you'll feel it when it bottoms out. I've got 2 that's already bottomed out on me. 3 that's bottomed out. 4 that's bottomed out. 5 that's bottomed out. And 6. Now we'll go with our inch torque to 100. Now you may have to hold the clutch hub. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now I'll go around again because just to double check. All right, and we're good. Your clutch is officially installed. That's all there is to it. Very simple. And now we can just take this bag and throw it away. Like I said, some people do reuse this oil, but if it's got a lot of material in it, I would not reuse that. Now what I want to do is tighten up this slop here. Then we can work on adjusting our clutch. All right, 9/16 on the tensioner nut. And what you want to do is just back it out quite a bit until that drops. Now we want to grab our chain, grab the whole tensioner, pull it out, hold it up where we feel like, yeah, that's about what we want. We'll tighten this up. And then we'll check it before we crunch down on it. What your play is anywhere from 5/8 to 7/8, or for your metric guys, or it's 5.9 millimeters to 22.3 millimeters. That sounds like a lot of millimeters, doesn't it? Maybe it's centimeters. I'm not sure. We'll go to a 5/8 on here. I'll get it, I'll eyeball it, and that right there is perfect. You can usually, if you do them enough, you can kind of feel where they should be. Go ahead and tighten that down good. That is a lock nut on there, so that's good to go. Now we can work on adjusting our adjuster here. So you want to back this nut all the way out. You want to put this in. Then you do this by feel. So remember, there's a rod inside there that as you push the clutch in, it pulls the rod this way, pushes this out. So we'll want to go clockwise until we lightly touch that rod. It should be about in the same place that it was before, but you'll feel it when it touches that rod. There. So now I felt it seat up against that rod. Don't go any further. Don't, because it will. You just want it to touch. Then you want to back out anywhere from a half turn to a full turn. So I like to kind of split the difference and do a 3/4 turn. So that's a half there. I'll go a quarter there. Then I will tighten this down, finger tight. Now you could put some blue on there if you wanted to, but usually it's not necessary. Now that's where this tool right here comes in really handy. Is I'll put some good oomph on that, and that clutch should be set. Now we'll go up to the clutch cable, bring out the adjustment so that our clutch lever comes all the way back out. Then I'll show you where to set that free play on the clutch lever, and this should be done. So we're up here at the clutch lever adjustment. My clutch is pushed all the way in. Okay. Now I want to bring my adjustment out, and I want to watch my clutch lever as it should be pulling the lever back up, and it is. Should have cut that zip tie off, I guess. Give me a little more room in there. Now once my clutch lever gets up to where you can see that it's fully seated and not moving anymore, I'll put pressure on the clutch lever and it'll still be a little bit loose. You pull on the clutch cable and that'll show you how much distance you still have to go. There we go. Maybe a little bit tighter. Couple more turns. I think that's about good. So I'll lock it down here with this lock nut. Doesn't take much. Then the boot, we might have to grease up to get the boot back on where everything's so rusted up, especially over that nut. All right. Now if you'll keep an eye on this clutch pack, when I push the clutch in, you can watch it separate. It has good separation. Looks like it's moving properly. Now when we get everything back together, if the clutch is either you put it in gear and it tries to take off, or you go down the road and get on it and it's slipping, then you'll need to make adjustments here. Now you can do that with everything back together, and you just take that derby cover off, and then you can adjust right here and then go down the road again, play with it. But that's the proper adjustment for new clutches. So I think we're going to be good there. Now we can go ahead and put a new primary gasket on, put our primary on, our chain's now adjusted, put the footboard back on, and we're done. We're good to go. All right, guys, when you're going back with gaskets, don't go cheap on your gaskets. This was a bear to get off. It's like a paper gasket. It broke around every hole. I had to take a razor blade around here, clean off every hole and dowel, and go with the good gaskets. I prefer James gaskets because they are actually a metal gasket with gasket material, and then they got this like rubbery O-ring thing around it on both sides. And I tell you, I know they're pricey. I know they're not the cheapest ones out there, but boy, do they do a good job. And when they come off, they don't come off in pieces. If you don't want leaks on your bike, don't skimp on your gaskets. All right, we'll clean this up here. And we're ready to go ahead and go back on. Right on the dowels and right in the hole. I want to run in one end just to hold it up so I can clean up the other ones, and I can go ahead and Loctite them. Oh, that's not even the right thing. I was going to say that looked awful long. There we go. Yeah, that's better. There we go. That sounded good. Now I'll just do that to hold it. Then we'll clean up all the other bolts. We will blue Loctite these before we spin them back on. What we're going to do is just run these in just to seat them. And then we'll go around with our torque spec, which is 100 inch-pounds on these as well. Remember, at the time, I'm just seating it. Clean up some of this oil. I don't like using a gun on these because the last thing you want to do is strip out that inner primary. Then you've got a big mess. Another good thing about those James gaskets is because they are metal, they hold their form better. And when some gaskets you'll put on here and they'll hang down. You got to kind of try to push them back up in there and hold them back up in there. And you try to line your bolt holes up with the gasket. And never had an issue with these. Now remember, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for our long ones up here at the top. And it kind of feels like the cover is a little bit off, not exactly flush or flat. So I'm hoping that good James gasket really helps seal things in a little bit better. We'll leave the inspection cover off because that's where I'll put the oil in. Now we can go around and torque everything to the 100 inch-pounds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I think I already did that. Yeah. 9, 10, 11, and 12. Now I'll go around in a circle again just to verify. But everything lined up well, cleaned up well. Hopefully no more leaks, because it had a pretty bad leak in it from looking at the frame on this side. And the way that gasket looked, I can pretty much assure that that was our leak. Okay. Everything is torqued on that. We'll go ahead and throw our oil in there, and then we can put our plate back on. Now these gaskets here, unless they are boogered up, these are metal like the James gaskets with a coating over. So they're good to reuse. You don't get a lot of oil splash up that way much anyway. So if they're in good shape, you're fine, I think, to reuse them. Now on the back plate here, if you want to write the date and the miles of the last time you changed this, you're welcome to. Or if you got a book, keep it in the book. Now these are star bits, 27s I believe. So I will blue Loctite those as well, but I got to put my oil in first. I'm getting ahead of myself. All right, here's my oil. I always like to keep these jugs to refill them with whatever oil I need. And they work great in spots where you can't. It's really hard to put a funnel in there, and especially to pour it from a regular quart jug. All right. Now remember, this one here is long. This one here is long. This right here is short. This right here is short. So 2 longs, 2 shorts. We'll blue Loctite those. Those will be torqued to the same torque as your primary bolts, 100 inch-pounds. Got our cover here. Long bolt. Long bolt. And our 2 shorts. Whew, everything's greasy and oily. Alright, we'll do 100 on this. Alright. Those are all torqued down. We'll clean this up a little bit. Now with our primary all together, we can go ahead and put all this stuff on. Also, it's a good time after you clean off underneath to rub and make sure that there's no leaks out of your primary plug or out of the gasket seat where it seats either. So I think we're good to go on that. All right, we're going to go back on with our floorboard and shifter and kickstand and all that jazz. All right, so we got 3 holes here, 1, 2, 3, that go 1, 2, 3 right there, 2 up and down and 1 to the side. Now they do have lock washers on them. Well, 2 of them do. One's a little shorter, but I am going to put some red Loctite on there because these were loose. I just don't like how loose they actually were. I went ahead and changed the oil filter while I had all this off. It's a lot easier to do. And the actual threading collar that goes on my oil filter spout come off in the oil filter. So I got it off the filter and Loctited that in real good. Now I got the long bolt that goes in here that holds this on, but it goes onto our floorboard. But we got to put our kickstand on first and the spring retainer for that. All right, so we buttoned everything up. Now I still have to take it off the lift, take it down the road, see how everything shifts and changes. We did the oil change, we did the primary change, we did the transmission change. So this is pretty much good to go. Now, words of caution. Don't have this on the lift and start it up and say, well, let me see. I'll hold the clutch and hit first gear and make sure my clutch is good. Don't do that. If your clutch isn't set right, that thing's going to take off even with your clutch pulled in. So don't do that. Take it off the lift. Make sure there's nothing in front of you. Start it up, then pull the clutch and hit first gear. Have your hand ready for that kill switch if it does take off. Sometimes that rod will get kind of stuck, or the balls, those 3 balls on your clutch cover side. When you loosen that clutch cover so much, they might not seat well. So you might have to go in and kind of readjust it. So if you don't hear back from me, then this was a successful clutch kit upgrade, fluid changes, and he's going to be back on the road and ready to go. Tell your mama now I said hi.